looking for canaries in the coal mine. Canaries in the coal mine.
Canaries in the coal mine.
That are not built for purpose for the two-legged individuals, so they have to be bastardized on the way out to make them work. Not a lot of people like to talk about failure. Obviously, it doesn't feel good.
I'm Anil Sukwami.
So I have dyscalculia, managed to succeed at my level in a bank, and I struggled to do basic math.
Hi, Julia. My name is Pitfall.
I ended up so stressed that I broke 3 teeth in my mouth, went into severe depression.
Because the transformation was not going well.
Yeah. Mowing over an underground hornet's nest.
Hard to, even here, I'm really sorry you had to go through that. But guys, I'm also Gen Z now, okay?
Play a clip of Pac-Man. You know I'm a beast. You gotta make me sound smart, friend.
Yes, okay, done. So, the crystal ball.
Every senior executive at a bank wants to claim they're a technology company.
Yeah.
Call it the Goldilocks effect. But the fintechs aren't gonna be able to earn revenue, and I hope you don't cut this part. Gender bias is really real. It happens to me, and it happens to every woman I know, and it's exhausting.
Today, I am really happy that our season 3 is being kicked off by who I call Taylor Swift of financial industry. And why I call her that, I will tell you. But you know what? Let me introduce you, Julia. And Julia will tell you about herself and the great things that she has done. And then we'll get into the interview.
Really proud to be sitting here after 18 years in the wealth management business, 23 years in financial services. Upon reflection, having sat among some of the largest and most interesting conversions of our time in the wealth management space, I was privileged to be the chief digital officer for Wells Fargo's private bank for almost 15 years.
Yep.
And now I am the global head of experiences and platform for Citibank. At Wells, the things that are really notable, I was part of a team that built the first Omnichannel home equity application front to back in 2001. So that was way before Omnichannel was even a buzzword, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it. And from there, went on to help build Wells Fargo's private bank from the ground up, from a CX perspective across all channels. Then was the first to put trust accounts online. Also managed the largest conversion of investment management accounts, so really complex specialty assets. In U.S. banking history during the Wachovia merger, did one of the industry's largest specialty wealth conversions separate to that fairly recently. And then also really kind of unbelievably led the team that launched the first mobile app for financial advisors to use while they were doing business with clients on the road. So nobody's kind of more surprised than me how it's ended up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now you know why I call her Taylor Swift of financial services. And there is a lot to unpack there. But what we'll do next is, Julia, you have led some really amazing projects, and we want to talk to you about those projects. People want to learn from you on those, right? So one, we want to talk to you about, the project that the biggest investment account, management account conversions that you did in US history. I know you gave all the credit to Dick when we were listening about it, but I understand you were also a very, very important part of it. So we'll talk about that.
Okay.
And then when you were in Wells Fargo, you did a $75 million transformation around, an advisor platform. From what I understand, it did not go well at a certain point of time. You guys realized that, and then you turned that around.
Yep.
So these are the 2 things we'll talk about next in this segment. We'll talk about, after that, we'll talk about why Gen Z is so important, why they are so disruptive. And then we have some crystal ball questions for you, to predict the future.
Perfect.
And in all of this, we'll also fit in 2 more questions from our audience, or no, I should say community. And so we'll get that done. Okay, so third section starting now. So Julia, you were part of the biggest investment account, transfer in the US banking history.
Yep.
And, our audience is mainly from Asia. So explain to us as a 5-year-old what this was about, why this happened, what this was about, what were the challenges, and what was the final outcome of it. So go.
Yeah. So the funniest part about this story is that I didn't realize that I had done this until I ran into an executive at a conference in October who remembered my name from 13 years ago and said, how do I know your name? And I said, I don't know. And he looked at his COO, and the COO said, that's because Julia ran the largest investment management conversion in US banking history, and she didn't miss a single file. And to this day, it is a record in terms of not having something go sideways at that scale. So when I can't even remember, in 2010, I don't remember when Wells Fargo bought Wachovia. We segregated the conversion between brokerage accounts and managed accounts, which is your more complex asset types that are managed by third parties, right? So all of the accounts, and there were tens and tens of thousands of them that were sitting on the Wachovia platforms that were their mainframes, had to be moved from one target state to the Wells Fargo target state platforms. Okay. And from a complexity perspective, you don't get more difficult accounts. And I mean like NATS level detail, account mapping by field, by client, in 10x multiplied, right, by each one. And I got assigned to be the leader of that work stream.
Oh, wow.
Now, again, I think it's easy when you're, old like me in your mid 50s to not realize kind of what you were in for back then. Right? Because you're just doing your job. Right? And you don't really realize that maybe someday it might be kind of momentous and that somebody might care. Right? So we didn't have context for this size and scale and enormity of what we were doing. We just knew that it was complicated and that we couldn't mess it up. So what we did, and now having seen failed projects, which are really ugly and cause people to lose their jobs, right? And is we followed a playbook. And that playbook is now what I use for all of my programs, right? Which is you get the right people at the table, you ruthlessly plan for what it is that you're getting in for in terms of, and let me give you an example, right? At a large company, let's say you're buying a vendor that does custom development of their software. I've seen conversions fail where the company that's buying the vendor software doesn't really understand the protocols of how that software was developed. And they're in a different sync. So if that software is being highly customized and it doesn't jive with the internal practices of the firm, that conversion will fail.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? So it's really crazy things that can set you sideways. It's that you didn't understand a particular calculation that's, doing something between a data piece that sits here and needs to get to a client, right? It's all of those details are often misunderstood and not planned for. So the first thing you do is you have to plan ruthlessly and honestly and have your eyes wide open. Then during the conversion phase, you have to be on top of your details. And then when you're done, you've got to do the change management. And I know you're thinking, you already said that before. I'm repeating it because I think most people get it wrong. Right? 70% of projects in our business wouldn't fail if we did it this way.
Right.
I mean, it is what it is at this point. And most people take it for granted, I think. And they think, people really, I think, want to have magical beliefs that it's going to be easy.
Right. No. And so basically this project starts now, right? And you are part of it. This is what, 2010?
2010, I think.
Yeah, 2010. And you are part of this project. So there are these managed accounts with complex products, complex, underlying billing, etc., everything and stuff. So you have to move them from Wachovia to Wells Fargo. How many accounts are we talking about? Okay,
so I knew you were going to ask me that, and this is where I have to confess. And your people that are listening to this who know me are going to laugh. So I have dyscalculia. Do you know what that is?
No.
So dyscalculia is the math equivalent of what is the one that's for reading? Oh my God, it totally left my brain.
No.
We're going to have to re-record this.
Yeah.
Dyslexia.
Yeah, dyslexia.
It's the math version of that.
Oh, okay.
So the crazy part of this story is I have managed to succeed at my level in a bank, and I struggle to do basic math. So,
Oh my.
which is crazy. And people really don't believe it. So I am largely numbers blind,
Okay.
which means I don't remember numbers.
No problem.
So we can look it up, but it was, I want to say that I remember that the whole conversion on the investment management side was like $1.7 trillion of assets.
Oh, wow.
Like I want to say that, but again, never ever trust me when it comes to repeating a number.
Yeah.
But there were tens of thousands of accounts,
Oh, wow.
right, that needed to move. And there's a funny little thing. People in the industry in the US will know that the system that we were going to, which was SEI, has one of their conversion codes were called cuckoos and kuaks, I swear. And those would dictate who could see what on an account. And so if you have a billionaire, right, who has entitled people in his family to maybe only see portions of his wealth, right, because you've got multiple families logging in and seeing these accounts, you could miscode a cuckoo or a kuak, which is a very funny name, and entitle like an uncle to see his brother's accounts in a way that would get you a fine, right, by a regulator. So any one of these little details could have gone wrong at any time.
Right.
So it's really about making sure that you have checks and balances and protocols in place to make sure that your data is not going wrong. You have to do very thorough, obviously, UAT, regression testing, acceptance testing, all of that. And you have to be looking for canaries in the coal mine, right? Like you have to just say, okay, if this one thing is wrong, you can't just assume it's wrong for one account, right?
Yeah.
You have to assume it's wrong for every account and
Right.
then chase it down to the end.
And I think that is the unique, or the point I was actually like chasing here.
Okay.
That how does such a large project go through, and you catch on to, obviously things will go wrong, and how do you catch on to things that, so you're looking for canaries,
Canaries in a coal mine.
canaries in the coal mine. So guys, and that is really important, and I think that you look for these challenges early, and you don't assume this is going to be with one. If you see that wrong with a single account, it could be a larger pattern as well. So now that tells me why these projects were going well. You can plan, you did really well at that, getting all the stakeholders involved, etc. But one of the things that you are really doing very differently, and I worked with my fair share of execs, is that sometimes a problem comes in and they're like, oh, you know what, this might be a one-off.
Yeah.
And then that one-off becomes a two-off. And then that two-off becomes like a very large lingering problem, which completely derails digital transformation. So, that was, I think, very insightful. Now, you did another project very recently, with Wells Fargo, where you did the whole replatforming of the
Specialty wealth.
specialty wealth, right? A $75 million project. Before we go into the details, I have somebody who wants to ask you a question.
Okay.
From our community. And this question is coming from Vipul Kumar. And what he wants to ask you is,
Hi, Julia. My name is Vipul. I have spent a significant part of my career in private banking sales, and I'm currently taking care of wealth products, in particular FX and digital assets. What I wanted to ask you is that private banking is a very human, personalized, and a high-touch business. And, we seem to be going through across organizations this digital transformation and a significant focus on digital tools. What role do you think these digital tools will play in this business? Thank you.
So that question is really near and dear to my heart because, again, I co-wrote the white paper on the future of advice.
yes,
And I have always believed, and I will never not believe, that wealth is a people business.
yep,
But it is a people business that expects hyper convenience, right? Because a billionaire doesn't want to be bothered by the fact that you can't figure out how to get his position, a large position in real time in front of him when he's logging into his phone in between board meetings, right? It's just not okay. So the expectations are very high. The answer that I would give you is that the future of advice strategy that I wrote based on that funding that we got from TJ literally covered from end to end how to get closer to your clients via digital. And the things that we predicted 10 years ago are still relevant.
Right.
And they are even more relevant today. And what I hope people take from that is your strategies last longer than 1, 2, or 3 years. So looking forward in a way that is thoughtful and strategic and yet also realistic is a great way to approach digital transformation. Right. And I think I know that because I watched what happened with Robo. One of the things that happened with Robo is that people got their eyes wide over this idea that a robot could do an algorithm of portfolio rebalancing. And they thought we're going to chase that because it's so cool. Well, did they have clients asking for it? They weren't. So again, it was a problem. It was a solution in search of a problem.
Yep.
And so I think if you stay close to how are humans behaving, right? And that'll be relevant, I think, for our Gen Z conversation. If you stay close to that, then you won't lose your way. If you listen to your advisors, what are your advisors telling you about what their clients are looking for? Right? Then you marry those things up, and I think you can't lose.
Really insightful. We have another question which touches on these topics and which is coming from the community. Now, this question has come from, Anil Sukwani. He's also, been a very, very important part of our community, very supportive. And you have to be an HNI, Ultra HNI to know this, because I would never have been able to come up with this question.
Okay.
So his question is,
Hi, Laksh. Thanks for inviting me to DigiJanis. Hi, Julia. I'm Anil Sukwani. I currently work at a top-tier wealth management firm based in Singapore. Julia, I'd like to get your perspective on why many retail investment and broking platforms provide a far superior digital experience to their clients when compared to the traditional private banks.
Yeah, no, right. Well, it's a great, Anil, you asked the right question. It is because they're so much more complex. And, right, you have banking products, you have lending, you have complex lending products, right? Like margin lending, structure, the SBL, like all of these crazy, way out of my lane, right? But crazy structured, difficult investment notes, right? That are often being served by a firm's wholesale division, right? Or their markets division.
Yes.
And then those are sitting on platforms that are serving entities, but they're selling the product to a two-legged individual.
Yes.
So you've got systems that are not built for purpose for the two-legged individual, so they have to be bastardized on the way out to make them work.
Yep.
So you're sitting on all of these complex products. You've got families that are also entities.
Yes.
Right? So you've got all of their IDs that you're having to manage and relationships and all of that. And entitlements. And then, so putting that all together and serving it to a client in a holistic way, it's not easy.
Okay.
It really isn't.
Right. So the complexity makes it the platform's
order of magnitude.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Anil, I hope you're happy with that answer. Great question. Well, now I want to get into the tricky part of this because, obviously, when you were doing this replatforming of specialty wealth, it did not go well initially.
Yep.
What happened there?
Yeah. So, look, I think that not a lot of people like to talk about failure. Obviously, it doesn't feel good. In this particular case, I will overshare. I ended up so stressed that I broke 3 teeth in my mouth, and I had to have potentially my jaw reconstructed, and I gained 20 pounds. I'm very vain, so me gaining 20 pounds is not a pretty sight. And I went into severe depression. So
Because the transformation was not going well.
yeah.
Oh, please continue.
And it gets even worse because I finally found a dentist who could fix my problems. It took him a year because I had so many dental problems, and then he was killed
Oh,
in a terrible accident. So these are like real life stories, right?
Yeah.
And so to take you back to that time, I was asked to take over someone else's project that was not doing well.
right.
And what I've learned from that now is, guess what didn't happen? Why wasn't it doing well? Because the upfront planning wasn't done well.
Right.
So I took over a project in midstream, and I immediately said, I need to take a step back and find out what's going wrong. I did a 6-week assessment, and I raised my hand and I said, we need to stop. Everything about this project front to back is going to go sideways. I was overridden and was told to keep going. So I can't give a lot of details about what happened. Of course you can't, as you can imagine. But it ended up failing in production, and then it had to be remediated. And I can't really talk about it more than that. But for a year, we were in this state of managing kind of not a great situation. And that's when all of the stress happened on my mouth. And then we had to remediate it. And in a year, I brought on a team and we got it fixed. And it's one of the proudest things I've ever done. But I want to go a little bit deeper and say that is one of the reasons why I know how important upfront planning is, because all of the people that started that project thought it would be easy. And they didn't do the work to say, are the calculations underneath decimal interest? Have we done a forensic accounting on those calculations? Because if those calculations are wrong, everything is wrong for your oil and gas assets. Did we do a forensic accounting on how they were doing loan calculations? Like, all of those details were not done. And then when you mix that with legacy data, so remember, the platform that we were coming off of had been sitting there for 30 years with the data never having been touched. So anyone who does my line of work knows that unearthing data that's been sitting there stale for years and decades, it's like mowing over an underground hornet's nest. That's what I call it. You mow over it once and the hornets are unleashed and there is no putting it back in the bottle, right? So this situation was, the calculations were wrong, the data was bad, and of course then your end output is going to be wrong too. Yeah. So in order to fix it, we had to go back to the basics about all of those things.
Yeah. No, and I cannot imagine, like, when you talk about being so stressful, it manifests in you losing teeth. That was hard to, even here. I'm really sorry you had to go through that. But, and these little things are really important. And I have seen somewhat, not at this scale, but obviously a smaller scale project, which went like sideways because somebody forgot, so we were doing, these RM connectivity tools via WhatsApp. And everybody's like so excited. It is COVID. We can go and we can connect via WhatsApp. And, on the other side, there's Symphony. And, it is great. And we're like, okay, this is going to be a winner. And it was in many ways as well. And then suddenly somebody comes out and says, oh, you guys don't know about, where do I feed the AO codes? I'm like, what the hell is AO codes now, And they're like, okay, so your RM can only speak to a certain specific customers. And that is mapped by an AO code.
Yep.
And it's like, nobody told you that? I'm like, no. Maybe we thought that you will only onboard people correctly via these AO. You will do that. Nobody really walked through that whole experience.
Yeah.
Because you have to also see, there are people who are doing this and they have not really lived through that journey. And me being the biggest culprit of this, right? And then a few days before, we are like, supposedly this is going to become a big deal, in Asia. There is no way of bringing that data in from a system.
Right.
So that whole project had to be rethought, etc. And so it was not as large as what you were talking, but
It's reality.
It is the reality that once you are not, and my biggest lesson from something like this is obviously you have to be prepared. You have to go through the journey that a customer will go through. You have to go through a journey, like whoever your end audience is, you have to go through the journey from the first starting point to the last starting point. And then you have to keep asking yourself that question, which is basically what you're talking about, the calculations, the data. And, I love the, how you defined it as, mowing over an underground hornet's nest. You don't know what will come out. And there have been such large examples, even in Singapore, people have spent $400 million plus on core banking transformations, which is not working.
Yep.
And, a lot of it will be like, the vendor. No, it is not the vendor. There are more things to it, right? So now, great chat. We have talked about digital transformation from the people aspect. I love this discussion that we have had because it is more about people, leadership, preparing, etc., rather than just talk about technology,
Tech.
which
I don't talk about tech much. Have you noticed that?
I noticed that, and that is amazing. And I think if you are doing digital transformation, and my experience is very limited, I don't want to say that, but from Julia's experience, make it about these things first, rather than going out and the savvy tech, blockchain, etc., and all of that stuff. So that is great. Now we are coming to the last two sections.
Okay.
You talk a lot about Gen Z,
Yes.
how they will be disruptive to banking.
Yep.
There is 70 trillion in assets that is moving, wealth, the great wealth transfer that is happening. Walk us through your thought process. Why do you think they will be disruptive?
Yeah. Well, so look, this again goes to the power, I think, of storytelling and evolving in your career. So when I finished The Future of Advice, I was thinking about what's next. And I believed that our business as a wealth management private banking industry was not leaning in to the ruthless digitization that I think we should be. And I was concerned about funding drying up for digital. I was seeing it, at my firm because, of course, we were going through the sales practice situation, and I was very concerned about falling behind. So I started paying attention to my kids. So I have 3 boys. They're now, my oldest son is 18, 15, and the baby is 12. And watching them be on their iPad when they were 3 years old was very powerful to me, because you could just see that they were digital natives. And so people that don't know, and I'm sure people do know, it's not millennials are not the original digital natives. The first generation to ever have a haptic memory of technology, of a smartphone, is Gen Z.
Yeah.
And people forget how powerful haptics are for your experience. So baby boomers love paper, right? So anybody who predicted that paper newspapers would have been completely gone by the year 2000 were wrong, because baby boomers were very much in their prime back then and they love paper.
Yes.
So I started making that connection to my own kids. And it was from a conversation that I had with a Harvard sociologist who talked to me about the power of haptics. So what I want us to do, and I know you can do it, is when I talk about Gen Z and how they'll be accelerators to accelerated disruptors, it's a couple of things. I believe that it isn't that they just want digital experiences. And I think people are getting that wrong. They are still people. What they expect, though, is completely frictionless experiences between online and off, which is not far off from what I thought was happening with clients and advisors in the future of advice. So I'll give a simple example, right? Gen Z loves to shop online, look online, go in a store and see it, think about it, and then potentially come back and buy it online.
Yeah.
If they see that a product is going to be in a store for them to go look at and it's not there,
Yeah.
you've missed the boat.
Yep.
In terms of your making a frictionless experience for them.
Yeah, I do that. Guys, I'm also Gen Z now, okay?
So So what I think people are missing the boat about is how much Gen Z will expect that. And they will not tolerate businesses that don't let you make an appointment on your phone, right?
Yep.
That don't make things hyper convenient. And I think as they rise in power and money and status, they will force naturally places to go out of business at a more accelerated rate than I think we saw in my generation. I'm obviously Gen X, but I think you'll see kind of more of those blockbuster type failures for those people that are not committed to ruthlessly removing the friction from their core bread and butter experiences.
Yeah, so basically, and a lot of it resonates. And this is a very common question, the wealth transfer, etc., that I've asked a lot of execs. And one thing that you've articulated a little bit more differently than some of the guys do, because you're also involved into this very deeply in your role, and you're thinking about it, is that the core service has to be the same and omni-channel experience, frictionless across platforms.
Yes.
So that is, and that online shopping example is great because how I do that, not to say I'm not Gen Z, but but yeah, that is very important. It is a very different mindset. It is a digital first mindset. All these people were born with a device in their hand, literally.
Yep.
And they've seen the internet. They've seen everything from day one. Yeah, please.
Well, so what I hope you guys do with this at this point is play a clip of Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Okay. When I give my talk about Gen Z disruption, that's my hashtag for it, I play a Pac-Man clip.
Yeah.
Okay. And when I'm looking into the audience, 100% of the Gen X audience smiles.
Okay.
They light up like a Christmas tree.
Yes.
And guess what's happening for them at that moment? I'm getting goosebumps because I'm Gen X. They are being taken back to their living room.
Yes.
When they were playing Pac-Man as an 8-year-old. And it's sight, it's sound, it's touch, all of those things come to bear. So you think about that. Gen X is nowhere near digital natives, right? You think about a 3-year-old who's my son, my 18-year-old son, playing Angry Birds.
Yes.
When he is 3 years old on my phone, the look of pleasure and satisfaction and enjoyment is real.
Right.
So that is going to stay with him forever.
Yep.
They will expect those sensory type experiences everywhere they go because they got those haptics were so rich when they were so little.
Right. And so what we will do is, Julia, you've given us a great example. So what we'll do is we'll now play a Pac-Man clip. And if you feel nostalgia, if you feel the experiences that Julia has been talking about, you can put it in the comments. We can live stream the comments. So, while we are in a studio, we cannot see your comments right now. But when we stream this, we'll be able to see your comments. You can we'll live stream them. And it will be a great feedback for, me and Julia to see how much that experience of looking at that counts for you. That would be a great feedback point. And then that builds upon what Julia just said, that these people, who are device first, haptic feedback first, want similar experiences. So that is, something that you can take away and, you can build towards the next gen. And, that
it's
is
a great challenge. It's a great challenge. And so look I'm a beast. I really hope your audience connects with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I love my social media engagement. I absolutely love it.
Yes.
And so, it's a challenge for my audience too, because I want them to watch this and give feedback.
Yeah. And so we'll do that. And, this has been a really wonderful chat. It has gone in, tangents that I did not imagine it would go into, and in a very nice way that, we're talking about people on a show which is about digital transformation of the financial industry. That is amazing because so many of these discussions are around technology.
Yeah.
Now, we have introduced a new segment, which is called the Crystal Ball segment.
Okay.
You can breathe easy. This is the last segment.
Okay.
Julia, we planned for, I think, a lot shorter episode, but I'm glad we had this whole episode. We'll cut it up in like we'll make it a series of its own,
Okay, you got to make me sound smart, friend.
Yes, okay, done. So, so we are now this segment where we call it as the crystal ball. And what this means is we'll give you 4 topics and, you look into the future, bring your crystal ball out and give a prediction. And you are very good at giving predictions. So,
I am.
Yes. So a lot of pressure on you to get these right.
Okay.
The first question, big tech has taken the world by storm when it comes to user experiences using data, AI, etc. and stuff. When do you think the financial industry will catch up? Because financial industry has access to a lot more personalized data and transactions and everything than the big tech will ever have. When do you think the financial industry will catch up and how will it show up?
So the players that will succeed are being very disciplined about how they get there, and they are paying attention to what the future generation wants. So when I think about who has done well, think about Fidelity. They were not a huge player in the wealth management space in 2010.
No, yes.
But they very much, I sometimes wonder if they read my Future of Advice
Yes.
study, and they totally leaned into that transformation in a meaningful way. And people and banks are struggling, and then you see big tech trying to become banks, right? Which is a fascinating dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to get into financial services, and then every senior executive at a bank wants to claim they're a technology company.
Yeah.
The reality is, and I'm going to say this, I think on the second question, is there's somewhere in the middle. So I have a tattoo about meeting in the middle. I recently wrote a LinkedIn post about it. I absolutely never believe that there is ever usually all or nothing.
Yeah.
The trick for big banks is how do they use big tech in a way that furthers their agenda, but also in a way that they can get the integration done.
Yeah.
So that's really the trick. And how I think you do that is you don't try to eat an elephant whole, which is what a lot of us do, but you also don't iterate by quick wins. You've got to find the sweet thing in the middle that you do really, really well and commit to doubling down on it.
Right.
Not trying to do all at once and not trying to go too small. And I call it the Goldilocks effect.
Yeah.
Right? When you find that bowl of porridge that you can do. And Fidelity really, if you think about it, they did that, right? They took the best of where they were going and then listened to what their customers said and very much just focused on the wealth management space as an actual thing that they were going to double down on.
Yeah.
And I think most people that are failing, back to the digital transformation failures, is people try to do too much.
Yeah.
So banks will only catch up once they get real about what is that middle.
Yeah, most digital transformations die of indigestion, like basically doing too much.
Yeah.
Rather than doing too little.
They try to eat the elephant whole.
Yeah. Great answer. Now, one thing that happens is, and we're getting to the next point here. One thing that happens is when you go out there today on LinkedIn, any social media platform, any discussion panel, AI is going to hit you in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel like a dinosaur which is taking selfies with the AI asteroid, which is about to hit you, right?
Yeah.
So how do you think AI will impact wealth management?
Yeah. So I'm gonna answer this in with a little bit more specificity. Let me say, because I want to say it out loud, I believe that the future of our business is absolutely squarely going to be about delivering personalized solutions to clients, hyper-personalized solutions to clients at scale.
Yep.
So you heard me say that. That is where the industry is going, full stop.
Yep.
Now, what does that mean and how do you get there? I think there are three ways. You've got data aggregation, third-party data aggregation, your Adipars, Mastros, Arches of the world that are doing sophisticated ability to bring accounts together in a holistic view. Then you have extremely powerful data analytics tools that you layer on top of that allow you to do anything you want with the data that you just got from the aggregator. Okay. Yep. Then you supercharge that with AI.
Yep.
You are talking about hyper-personalization at scale.
Yep.
And what I'm going to go back to a story about how your clients always tell you what they need. And I know you're not expecting this, and I know you'll love it. 15 years ago, I had a chance to talk to an heir whose grandfather was Walt Disney's best friend. And he was Disney's first attorney. This next gen said to me, I don't understand why I wouldn't be able to log into my online banking session and be served a completely rich experience telling me what is going on with Disney. Think about that. Like, they were deeply held in Walt Disney positions, right? Because it was their legacy. And what they were asking for was a news feed with all of the Walt Disney news. Think about that. Today, we would be serving up the war between DeSantis and whoever that president before, whatever. You know about that, right? You would be serving up that. You would be serving up stock moves on Disney. You would be serving up that client's positions. That client was asking for hyper-personalization. Now, that 15 years ago would have been close to impossible, right? On these legacy tech stacks.
Right.
But those three things combined make that not only possible, they increasingly make it an expectation.
Yep. And I've gone on record with one of the bigger publications here, Asian Private Banker, and I said hyper-personalization is the biggest opportunity for the industry.
You did?
I did. It was back in
I love that.
2.5 years. I will send you that article.
Perfect. Please do.
So we talked about so many things, but we did not talk about one thing: fintechs. Now, banks, fintechs, etc. They are coexisting in this world. Fintech started with this whole vision that we will disintermediate banks, etc. That has not played out, obviously.
It has not played out.
What do you think is the end game?
Yeah. So the end game is the middle. And for me, and being, around for as long as I have, what I think you'll see is that fintechs will get real about the fact that they need to take their technology to a bank. And you'll see more of these kind of the quote unquote innovation arms of banks, I think, consuming fintechs at a faster scale. And there's two reasons, right? It's because the banks have continually proved that they can't do transformation by themselves, coding their way out of it, where every single application is a homegrown app. Which happens, trust me, to this day. We didn't even talk about that. But they're not going to be able to code their way out of it.
Yes.
But the fintechs aren't going to be able to earn revenue without any clients.
Yeah.
So I think you'll see more and more partnerships and or consumption of these companies in the next 5 years.
Okay, that is a good, And we are at the last question. What is one thing you would want to change about wealth management?
Look, I want to acknowledge that I have had an amazing career. When I think about, you see a lot of these horror stories of D&I and all kinds of things. I have had no horrible experiences that are traumatic or anything that you sometimes hear, especially in the US. I don't know if it happens in Asia. But so I want to first acknowledge that I've had an amazing career. The one thing that I would change is absolutely, I would love to see more women. And I would love to see more women at senior positions.
Yep.
And I hope you don't cut this part
of
the interview when I say this. Gender bias is really real. Women not getting taken seriously when they say something and then a man says it and 5 minutes later somehow it has credibility. That's a real phenomenon. And people think that it doesn't happen to me anymore because somehow people perceive me to be really senior, which of course I can't relate to because it's my life. It happens to me, right? Still. And it happens to every woman I know. And it's exhausting.
Yeah, it is. And Julia, we first of all will not cut that out. And I think generally bias, gender, racial, and some of the other biases, etc. They do exist, even though, the world shouldn't have them right now. And, not to go too deep into this, but I would also agree with you. I would hope that we can, as a civilization, we can get to a point where we can separate out the merit of an idea from the person who's giving it out.
Yep.
So we can separate out a problem from a person,
Yep.
and we can look at it independently in an unbiased way. I buy that one. And I think, in all the answers I've heard, what people would like to change, this one resonated so much with me. Thank you so much for joining us for this amazing episode of season 3 of our Vantage Point by DigiJanus. Thank you so much, and we'll come back with our next episode pretty soon. Thank you. Thanks, Julia, for being here.